Hi, Tom. Hi, Suella.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Suella. My question for you is, with the meteoric rise in popularity of Reform UK, what are your views on the idea of a coalition between the Conservatives and Reform? And also, does Reform's values fit or align more closely with your own personal political values and beliefs?
All right, gosh. Listen.
Let's see if we can get you off message today.
I've been warning for some time about the severe threat that the Conservative Party faces at the moment. And, we have been hurt by the Reform Party because their success has been, as you say, meteoric in a very short space of time. And much of our defeat was because of Reform. I've lost count of the number of my colleagues who lost their seats in July because they were reformed effectively. This is our fault. The Conservative Party failed to tackle immigration. We failed to cut taxes, and we failed to stand up for common sense, patriotic values. And it's our fault that Reform has risen so exponentially. In terms of going forward, if you look at the polling, look at this last poll that came out yesterday. If you take the collective vote share of the Conservatives and Reform, we're approaching 50% of the vote. I think it would come up to 47% or something like that. You can't win an election outright on 25%. And ultimately, I'm someone who really does think that we should do whatever it takes to stop another Labour administration. And if there is territory for agreement and coalition, I don't know what you call it or what form it takes, and these discussions will crystallise nearer the election. I do think that if there is alignment between the Conservatives and the Reform Party at the time of the next election, if it means stopping another 5 years of Labour, I would support it.
And that could mean Reform stands a candidate in one particular seat where they're most likely to win, and the Conservatives drop that particular candidate and stand it in different areas, similar to what Nigel Farage did for Boris Johnson in 2019. There
are many forms in which it could take. So there's either some kind of agreement before an election, in the form that you suggest, standing down candidates, or there is some form of agreement after an election. It all depends on how people vote.
Coalition.
That's one way.
Confidence and supply.
Confidence and supply is
like
another.
The DUP.
Like the DUP, that's another arrangement. So there are lots of forms, and it's too premature to try and preempt what form it might take. But I do think, at some point, a serious conversation needs to be had, because I am horrified by what this government has done in 6 months. Imagine what they're going to do in 5 years.
Suella Braverman on LBC this afternoon was pointing out that if you took the Reform vote and the Conservative vote together, you get about 50%, and they would be able to absolutely sweep aside Labour. And therefore, she was saying there should be some kind of alliance or merger between the two parties. What's your reaction as a Labour man?
She has absolutely let the cat out of the bag. Kemi Badenoch in Nigel Farage's top pocket. What a coalition of chaos that would be. And if you take my old seat in Leicester, I think people in Leicester, I think the message would be clear to them. If you want to stop a Farage-Badenoch chaotic coalition at the next general election, come out and vote Labour. If that's the plan, Labour's ready for this fight.
As you've heard, I asked Ian Duncan-Smith a little earlier about the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, telling my colleague Tom Swarbrick that the Conservatives should enter into an electoral pact with Reform UK. Aggie Chambre is back with me now to give us more details on what was said. So Ian Duncan-Smith, not very keen. Don't pally up with your executioner, he said. Any reaction from Reform?
Reform have said fundamentally, no, we're not doing it. A Reform UK MP said to me, we're focused on winning the next election, and a spokesperson said there will be no pact. So difficult for Suella Braverman, Reform saying absolutely not, and indeed the Tories not sounding too keen on this either. John Ashworth, I thought it was interesting, his response, saying they've let the cat out of the bag, and you can see this might be beneficial for them if these suggestions continue to wave around. I think it might not be beneficial to them if it actually happens.
It feels to me a bit like that old joke about two porcupines making sex and having sex. How do they do it? Very carefully indeed. Aggie, thank you very much.
Do you think that the look of British politics that is traditionally been Labour versus Tory, Tory versus Labour, how much has that changed, Mr Farage?
Good morning. I think we're at one of those moments that only happens once every 50, 100 years or so. This is a major, major change. And it was interesting listening to Suella Braverman. She doesn't seem to understand that there are millions and millions and millions of people who voted Conservative in 2019 who are absolutely disgusted by what was done in government, a complete breach of all of their election promises, and these people are not coming back to the Conservative Party. So reform is on the up. The other parties are going down. Labour going actually than the Conservatives, a point that seems to get missed in some of these conversations. The next election is 4.5 years away, so it's all pretty academic anyway. But look, we're on the up, and we intend to be the party that challenges Labour. We want to replace the Conservatives as the party of opposition. And in some parts of the country, that is happening. I mean, take Wales, that poll that you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yep.
In Wales, Labour on 28%, Reform on 25%, Conservatives on 12%. So I think what you're seeing is when Conservative voters, and by the way, 40% of those who voted Conservative on July the 4th last year, 40% of them considered voting Reform. If they believe that Reform is the one that can beat Labour, you'll see a big switch, a lot more people switching to us.
How open would you be to some kind of deal in 4 years' time, or whenever we get closer to the actual moment?
Well, Nick, back in 2019, we'd won the European elections as the Brexit party. We'd got rid of Mrs May. We'd opened the door for Boris Johnson. And as an act of goodwill, to really get Brexit over the line, I withdrew candidates from 320 seats, which contributed significantly to Boris's 80-seat majority. I did it because I believed it was the right thing for the country to do to end this constant battle and to actually get Brexit over the line. What was I rewarded with? I was rewarded by a party that had promised again and again to reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year, who in 2023 gave us net migration of 1 million. 1 million. I was rewarded by every industry, from fishing to financial services, not deregulating, not getting rid of European Union rules, which for many people was one of the reasons for voting Brexit. And frankly, I feel pretty let down by them as well. So really the question you're asking me is, would I trust them? And the answer is no.